Well, now we begin with our opening speech, which is going to be happening by the Ministry of ICT. Well, the Kenyan Cybersecurity Overview, the Communications Authority's first quarter report for 2018-19 shows us that the National Cybersecurity Center detected 3.82 million cyber threats, which is a rise from 3.46 million reported from the last quarter. Within the review period, the banking sector remained the most targeted industry, followed by the government institutes. These are the latest statistics from the National Kenya Computer Incident Response Team Coordination Center. Well, for our opening speech, which is going to be on the Kenyan government's approach on security's national cyberspace, we have with us Richard Kiarie, the Principal ICT Officer, Head, Policy and Research Unit, Ministry of ICT, Innovation and Youth Affairs, Republic of Kenya. Well, Mr. Richard has over 25 years of experience in the ICT industry. In his long career in government, Mr. Kiarie has developed and maintained diverse systems for government, implemented security mechanisms for different MDAs, carried out system audits, and performed advisory roles to many public agencies on the diverse issues of ICT. So now it is time to welcome Richard Kiarie for the opening speech. Thank you so much, Richard, for joining us today.
Okay, thank you very much, the organizers and all the participants who are listening from whichever part of the world. It is indeed my privilege and honor to just make a few remarks on Kenya government's approach on securing the national. I hope I'm not breaking when talk about the government. The government is quite wide. Sometimes we look at it as the orchestrator of the ICT ecosystem and also as a player in that particular ICT system. Just like you have correctly said, we have had a lot of incidences on cybersecurity, and we as government are quite concerned, and we have instituted measures which can really address the issues. I don't want to water so much. I don't know whether you can allow me to share my small presentation so that I can move quite fast on it. But I trust you can see my presentation. This is that Kenya is ranked as one of the top 10 fastest growing digital economy, both regionally and globally. Well, that is well known. I did not quote the source. And we also well placed to take great advantage of the digital, what we call the fourth industrial revolution. I know all the participants here are quite aware about the new revolution which is taking place. And as it is taking place, it is also coming with a lot of challenges. Just like you have correctly stated, we got some statistics from our National Cyber Incidents Response Team. I don't want to belabor that. And what they have done is that they have given major categories of threats to be malware, the botnets, web application attacks, system vulnerabilities, and I've given the source where you can get that particular information. And when we talk about challenges with security incidences, although we have given the statistics there, we know there are so many incidences that go unreported. Yeah, many victims prefer to address the threat internally because they may have some business repercussions. We know that new threats keep emerging all the time, and sometimes are difficult to resolve. Some threats may be active and the organization may not even be aware of. And then we're also having a lot of peddling of fear about some technological devices. All the time we get a lot of, I don't know whether we call it misinformation. I was reading a WhatsApp message which was saying that our phones are spying on us. Our smart TVs are spying on us. In fact, last year we had a meeting. We are developing a security system for Parliament. We had some consultants from a certain country, and what caught my eye is that they were all covering their cameras. So I engaged one of them and asked him, why do you have to cover your camera? And he said that it is possible for somebody to switch on your camera and spy on you without even you knowing. And then this one caught me by surprise, because every time my camera is on, the LED light comes on, the indicator light comes on. But he said it's actually possible. So we are still investigating that. We are doing a research on it to find out, is it really true? Is it something that can really be a threat to us? We also have weakest link issues. As government, we're always giving directions. And yet our people, sometimes they do not take those particular policy directions very seriously. I'll just share my small experience with computer fraud, online fraud. And if you can see on your screen there, I received a series of messages. I have a bank account, which I rarely use. Actually, I put most of my savings there. But then the bank a few years ago, they gave me the bank card. It is a Visa card. Then one morning, I'm in the office, actually around noon, and then I saw a series of messages which are coming within seconds of each other that have made a purchase of certain items. And within about half an hour, they had cleaned my account. I called the bank, and then they say there's very little they can do about it. They were asking me whether I've done online purchases. I told them even my card, I've never used it. Since you gave me, I've never even removed it from the box. When I went now to the investigative arms, they were not well equipped even to do the investigation. They were asking me now, I mean, do you have like, where do you start? I mean, do you have any suspect of who could be perpetrating this? So at that point, I realized there's very little I can do about it. And as government, we are very much aware about the cybersecurity threats and how they can impact the development and use of ICTs. And as we are trying to move online, the security for infrastructure and the resilience in the face of attack and coherent internal policies to protect citizens from abuse and illegal exploitation have become critical to our continued progress. So what we are doing as a government is to develop a comprehensive, defensive, and offensive cyber capabilities to address and resolve the threats as they occur. Some of the typical measures we have done is that we have addressed the security issues in the National ICT Policy. I'll be talking briefly about that. We have enacted the Data Protection and Privacy Act. We have also enacted the Computer Misuse and Cyber Crimes Act of 2018. And also, we have established a National Cyber Command Center among the many other initiatives that the government has undertaken. If I may just quickly rush over the National ICT Policy, it is there, it's online, so I don't actually have to go into it. It was actually gazetted this year. We have been reviewing it for the last 3 or so years. It was taken to the cabinet for approval, and then it was put in the Kenya Gazette, which now means it is officially a government policy. And it has addressed key areas in the issue of securing ICT and also creating an enabling environment for ICT. So one of the things, or one of the provisions in that particular ICT policy is to recognize cybersecurity as a key pillar of national security. We know that these days a nation can be paralyzed if its ICT systems are paralyzed. And therefore, we need to take this very, very seriously. Like now, if you look at that particular bank incidents, it made me, and I have been an ICT professional for many years, to start having misgivings about online transactions. Now, if I'm in ICT, what about the ordinary citizen if they experience such an incident? Yeah. Then there's also the establishment of enabling legal framework and building capacity in the investigative prosecution and the judicial arms of government. In my particular case, none of the investigative agencies could handle that. In fact, they were telling me they don't know where to start from. And they told me that when I talked to the prosecution team, they said this is actually something which is very, very difficult to prosecute. How do you gather evidence? And many other things. Then you've come up with security standards for use across government. And also we are trying to create awareness on the importance of good security practices, not only within government, but also to the general population. We keep on running radio shows trying to warn the public, don't disclose your passwords, even to your bank or whenever you get a call. But still, we are getting a lot of incidences, people complaining day in, day out, that somebody called, they told me to review my password, and then I give the password, and then I could no longer access my account, or I could no longer access my phone. In the country this day in Kenya, there is a lot of use on mobile money transfer, what we call M-Pesa. It is widely used across the country, and there has been a lot of fraud in the mobile money transfer market, what we call M-Pesa. Yeah. We're also trying to ensure the efficient mitigation of cyber threats in order to promote trust and confidence for online transactions. So what you're doing is that we realize that the cybercrime can have a lot of impact on what we do. But what we do is that, like you have seen, we have one arm which we call the Communication Authority. What they do is that they receive the cyber incidences and they give advisories. But as I mentioned earlier, some of these incidences are never reported. So sometimes the Communication Authority, although they're giving us statistics, they may not be representative of all the crime that is taking place. We're also trying to support the development of new generation technologies that can foster secure operations. And we're also trying to implement measures to protect the vulnerable groups, such as children and the elderly. Well, as I talk to you, I know a number of people, especially the people who are over the age of 70. These are some of the victims of the vicious crime on online transactions, getting calls, social engineering, and so forth. And the last thing that we have done is to develop intelligence, defensive, and offensive capabilities in the cyber spatial dimension of the battle space of today and also of the future. And just like I've mentioned earlier, some of the measures that we have taken, I don't actually have to report to repeat this: the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act, the Data Protection Act, specific and effective legislative instruments on privacy, cybercrimes, ethical and moral conduct, encryption, digital signatures, copyrights, and fair trade practices. We're also trying to examine the gaps in the regulatory capacity. Right now, we are conducting a lot of training among our people so that they can be able to handle incidences properly. One thing is that we need to identify the threats. And then the other thing is that we should be able now to address the threats as they occur. The other thing that we have done is to identify institutions that are what we call critical. And then we classify them as critical infrastructure. Those are infrastructures that can bring the government down or the nation to a standstill if they are attacked. And these ones will be required to demonstrate strict adherence to IT security management by complying with requirements set out by the government or relevant regulatory authorities. Now, when we talk about the government, I say that I'll look at it from two perspectives. The first perspective was the government as the orchestrator of the ecosystem. That means the government now is the one which is setting direction on the desirable state of ICT in the future. This they do through policies, they do through legislation, they do even by giving guidelines. But then we also look at the government itself as a player in that cyberspace. Remember, we have many systems which the government operates. Immigration, we collect data about our citizens. Registration of persons. Actually, last year we had a very successful campaign. We decided to digitize all the details of our citizens. We want to give them a new generation ID, what we call a Huduma number. And so we went around the country. We had a device where we are taking biometrics of each and every person in the country. It is still in the process of being rolled out, but we hope that with this particular database, we'll be able now to respond more to things like crime and also to address the concerns of the citizens much well. We also have things to do with revenue collection in government. We have payrolls for the government and many other things. So we are trying to digitize a lot of systems, and most of our objectives is accessibility and utility. We want any Kenyan, wherever you are in the country, to be able to access government services. We also want affordability. We know that I have not given the statistics for mobile penetration in the country, but it is estimated that as much as 80% of the adult population, they have access to mobile devices. So mobile devices are becoming very pervasive in the society. We also want systems that are convenient and easy to use. We also want systems that can grow. And also want lastly, what we call security, resilience, and availability, which possibly the panelists in this particular forum will help us address as government. Now, when we talk about government, these particular systems, they are quite complex. And I have a diagram there. It is actually like on everything from local area networks, databases, hardware failure, system failure, programmers, operators, external environment, and so forth. All these are threats which are befalling our government systems. Well, these are actually common threats which you may find in anywhere, where sometimes you may send a message and the message never reaches the person because there's interruption. It could be confidential message and then it is intercepted. Sometimes it could be modified so that what goes to the recipient is quite different from what the sender intended. It could be a false message, and we have received quite a number of messages which appear as if they have come from the government. They have the .go.ke domain, but they never came from that institution. And so we try to find out how can we fight some of all these challenges. I know most of the people in this particular panel are experts in that particular domain, but as government, we are concerned about those particular incidences. So what we have done is that we have come up with what we call a government security strategy, where we try to prevent, we have proactive detection, and also containment. So We have implemented a number of measures like perimeter security, access control. We also have, if an intruder is able now to go beyond the wall, we have intrusion detection systems or intrusion prevention systems. We are also able to conduct forensic analysis to find out actually how was that attack perpetrated. And if the intruder is able to hit the target, are we able to recover very quickly? You know, if you look at something like the mobile money market, most Kenyans are so dependent on M-Pesa. M-Pesa is actually a form of transferring money. And I think they transfer, I don't have the figures of it, but could be billions of shillings on a daily basis. And there was time this system was down for a few minutes. And it brought like some social upheaval. People were depending on it to fuel vehicles at petrol stations. Others were in restaurants, but they could not transact. So you can see these are some of the systems that we want to recover as quickly as possible. And when you talk about security, we are trying to focus on quite a number of areas as a government. Possibly you have heard about the public infrastructure. We want to have our own digital certificates. And so we are trying to come up with measures on cryptography. How can we ensure that transactions are secure end to end? So cryptography is some of the techniques that are being investigated in making sure that all the transactions that take place in the government systems, they are secure. We're also trying to look into the area of law, investigation, and ethics. We have been trying to train our people in the judiciary, in the office of the Director of Public Prosecution, and also in the police force, so that they are able to handle cybercrime. Well, I don't want to go so much into all these particular domains: security management, security architecture, physical security. That means we try to secure our systems, business coordination and disaster recovery planning. We have a number of disaster recovery sites, but I will not discuss about them here because some of them are confidential. Operation security, application system security, and also safeguarding of telecommunications and network security. So all those are typical areas that the government of Kenya is focusing on. And I know panelists, we are going to learn much on how the government and other parties are doing on this particular area. And then I'm just rushing to my conclusion. And then when you look at the typical approaches, we can look at it from policies, technologies, processes, and so forth. So I go back to what I had said earlier about our targets on digitization. You know, the last one I said, when I talk about accessibility, affordability, convenience and ease of use, scalability, the last one was security, resilience, and availability targets. So number one, we want 0 security breaches. Number 2, we want 99.99% availability. So we hope in this forum, we can help the government and the country achieve the targets, new security breaches, and also 99.99% availability. I did not intend to take a lot of your time because I know most people are eager to hear about the initiatives that the people are taking. This is a learning session. So I would like to stop at that stage and then back to you, the organizer. Thank you so much.
Sure. So, Richard, just in interest of time, we do have two questions, but we'd be able to only take one. So, Abu Bakr asked that, is there a policy for sharing cyber incidents between the relevant stakeholders by the industry? Richard, could you take on that, please? And how is the government of Kenya approaching cybersecurity from a regional global framework? George asked that. So, these are the two quick questions. If you could, have your remarks on the same.
Yeah, we are, we are sharing cyber incidences. This is actually a work in progress. What happened is that we formed the National Cyber Command Center. It is actually just 2 years old. And so one of the objectives was that if there's any incident, they'll record it, and anybody can go now to their website and see how it can be addressed. So we know that security is actually something which is shared, and so everybody now can see how one thing is to understand that there's a threat, and the other thing is how that particular threat can be resolved. The other question, possibly I got it lost a bit because of network connectivity. The other question, number 2, was, sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So the question number 2 is, how's the government of Kenya approaching cybersecurity from a regional and global framework? George asked that.
Okay, from a regional framework, what we have done is that we are cooperating with other institutions who are doing similar tasks. Like in the East African community, we are really engaging other stakeholders, other governments, and we discuss on what needs to be done. And also globally, what we are doing is that we are talking with other interested parties and other governments, India, Israel, America, and they are all part of what we are calling intelligence gathering agencies. We exchange ideas, they tell us about the best practices, and we handle such depending on the information that we get from them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Richard.